A single stone block, 2.5 tons. That's the weight of a modern SUV. Now imagine moving 2.3 million of these blocks, without trucks, without cranes, without any modern machinery whatsoever. Ancient civilizations around the world built structures so massive, so precise, that modern engineers still study them, trying to understand how. And here's what blows my mind. Some of these stones weigh over 1,000 tons. That's heavier than the Statue of Liberty, moved by people who had never seen a wheel used for transportation. Today, we're cracking open one of history's greatest mysteries. And no, aliens aren't the answer. The truth is more impressive than any science fiction because what they accomplished required something more powerful than any machine: human ingenuity applied across generations. Let's get into it. Before we explore how they did it, you need to understand just how insane this challenge really was. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2560 BCE, contains approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. The average block weighs 2.5 tons, but some granite blocks in the King's Chamber weigh up to 80 tons. 80 tons. That's 13 elephants, or a commercial airliner. And these granite blocks, they came from Aswan, 500 miles away. That's like dragging a plane from New York to Charlotte with ropes. And here's the kicker. These weren't just piled up randomly. The precision is insane. We're talking gaps between blocks thinner than a credit card. Some joints are so tight you can't fit a human hair between them. But Egypt isn't alone. At Stonehenge in England, 25-ton sarsen stones were transported over 20 miles. On Easter Island, the Moai statues average 14 tons, with the largest weighing 82 tons, moved across miles of rough terrain. But this is where it gets absolutely wild. At Baalbek in Lebanon, there are foundation stones weighing 1,200 tons. 1,200! We don't have a crane today that could lift that at that height. The largest mobile crane in the world maxes out at about 1,000 tons, and that's with hydraulics, counterweights, and computer systems. So the question isn't just how did they move stones? The question is, how did they move these stones with those tools to that precision? Let's break it down. And hey, if your mind is already blown, smash that like button and subscribe because we're just getting started, and what comes next is even more fascinating. Method number 1, the wooden sledge, and a secret ingredient hidden in plain sight for 4,000 years. In an Egyptian tomb from 1880 BCE, there's a painting showing 172 men pulling a massive statue on a sledge. But look closely at the front. See this guy standing at the front of the sledge? He's not pulling. He's pouring liquid onto the sand. For centuries, archaeologists thought this was ceremonial, some kind of ritual, until 2014, when physicists at the University of Amsterdam decided to actually test it. They built a sledge, loaded it with weight, and tested different methods of pulling it across sand. Dry sand? The sledge dug in, barely moved. But then they added water. Friction dropped by 50%. 50%! The sledge glided. Here's the science. Water creates tiny bridges between sand grains, capillary bridges. The sand particles stick together, forming a firmer surface. The sledge doesn't sink, it glides. This one technique means the difference between needing 300 workers and 150 workers. When you're moving thousands of blocks, that's a game changer. Modern experiments proved that a team of 50 workers could pull a 2.5-ton block on a lubricated sand path. For massive 80-ton blocks, they'd simply scale up. More workers, bigger sledges, more coordination. But here's what's brilliant. They didn't just drag stones randomly. Evidence suggests they worked in synchronized rhythms, possibly chanting or drumming to coordinate pulls. Like a rowing team, but with stones. That guy pouring water? He might be the most important person in the whole construction crew. But moving stones horizontally is half the battle. How do you lift them 480 feet into the air? That's where things get really clever. The ramp theory. Simple concept, but the engineering? Mind-bending. Theory 1. The straight ramp. build a massive ramp alongside the pyramid as it gradually rises as construction progresses. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. To reach the pyramid's peak at 480 feet, you'd need a ramp over a mile long with a gentle enough slope that workers could actually pull stones up it. And here's the killer. That ramp would contain more material than the pyramid itself. You'd be building something bigger than the pyramid just to build the pyramid, and that doesn't make sense. Theory 2, the spiral ramp, a ramp that winds around the outside of the pyramid as it grows, way more efficient with materials, and the slope stays consistent. But there's a problem. The ramp would block the pyramid's corners, making it nearly impossible to check alignment and precision. Remember, these corners are accurate within 1/15 of a degree. So how do you maintain that insane precision if you can't see what you're building? Enter the newest theory, and this one is wild. In 2007, French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin proposed that the pyramids used internal ramps. Here's how it works. Use an external ramp for the first third of the pyramid, then switch to internal ramps, spiral corridors built right into the pyramid structure. The stones get pulled up through the interior, leaving the outside for precision work. Sounds crazy? In 2017, researchers used microgravimetry and thermal scanning on the Great Pyramid and found density anomalies and voids that match exactly where these internal ramps would be. We might have actually found them. Thousands of years later, the pyramid is revealing its own construction secrets. But here's what I think really happened. They didn't just use one method. Straight ramps for the lower levels where volume isn't a problem, spiral elements for the middle sections, and internal mechanisms for the final, most precise stones at the top. They adapted, they experimented, they solved problems as they went. You know, like engineers do. Sometimes the simplest tools unlock the most mind-blowing solutions. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, described Egyptian workers using wooden levers and fulcrums to lift stones step by step. It sounds slow, tedious, and honestly, kind of boring. Rock the stone onto a wooden platform, insert shims, lift again, add more wood, repeat. Inch by inch, foot by foot. But boring doesn't mean ineffective. With the right lever and fulcrum placement, 3 people can lift what would normally require 10. It's just physics, and they understood physics, even if they couldn't write the equations. At Stonehenge, the challenge was different. These stones didn't need to go up as much as they needed to stand upright. Researchers believe workers dug A-framed shaped pits. They'd slide the massive sarsen stone to the edge, then use ropes, timber frames, and the pit itself as a pivot point to tip the stone vertical.
Gravity becomes your friend instead of your enemy. Modern experiments proved a team of just 130 people could move a 40-ton stone 1 mile in a single day, using only wooden sledges, rails, and muscle power. No machines, just coordination and understanding of forces. But Easter Island? Easter Island presented a unique puzzle that stumped researchers for decades. The Moai were carved in a quarry and had to travel up to 11 miles across volcanic rock terrain. No trees for rollers, they'd cut them all down. No smooth sand for sledges, just rough, brutal landscape. And here's the weird part. The local oral traditions said the Moai walked to their platforms. For generations, scientists dismissed this as mythology, until 2012 when archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo tried something nobody else had considered. What if the locals weren't speaking metaphorically? They attached ropes to a replica Moai's head and base, divided workers into 2 teams, and had them rock the statue side to side. And it walked. It literally waddled forward like a giant stone penguin. The D-shaped base and center of gravity made it stable enough to rock without falling, but mobile enough to move. 3 teams, left, right, and forward, could walk a 10-ton statue across rough terrain. The ancestors weren't telling myths, they were describing exactly what they did. The statues walked. We just had to listen. Here's what we miss when we focus only on the engineering. The organizational achievement might be even more impressive than the stones themselves. Recent archaeology has completely rewritten our understanding of who built these monuments. These weren't slaves dragging stones under the whip. These were skilled professionals in a massive, organized operation. We found their villages, dormitories for 20,000 workers, industrial bakeries producing thousands of loaves daily, medical facilities where injured workers received treatment. We have skeletons showing healed fractures, which means they were cared for after injuries. Think about the logistics for a second. You need to feed 20,000 to 30,000 workers daily, rotate crews to prevent exhaustion, source stone from quarries 500 miles away, coordinate transportation across land and water, maintain precision alignment to celestial north, manage timelines over 20+ years and train new workers as old ones retire or die. All without computers, without email, without written mathematical formulas as we know them, without project management software. They used astronomy to align the pyramid to true north within 1/15 of a degree. They understood the Nile's flood cycles to time transportation. They had quality control systems ensuring stone cuts were precise. And here's where it gets really wild. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey was built 11,600 years ago. That's 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the pyramids. These people carved and moved massive T-shaped pillars, weighing up to 20 tons before they even invented agriculture, before farming, before cities, before writing. Which means this knowledge, this ability to organize labor, move massive stones, and create monuments goes back further than we ever imagined. Whether it was the Egyptians, the Britons, the Rapa Nui, the Inca, or whoever built Göbekli Tepe, these civilizations proved that human cooperation, ingenuity, and determination could overcome what seems impossible. They didn't need aliens, they didn't need lost technology. They had something more powerful. They had time. They had purpose, and they had each other. But we need to talk about something these monuments don't show us: the price paid in human suffering. In the workers' cemeteries near the pyramids, we find skeletons telling painful stories. Chronic arthritis in spines, shattered vertebrae, crushed feet, broken bones. These people performed brutal, back-breaking labor. Some died on the job. Many lived with permanent injuries and chronic pain. But here's what's remarkable. We also find evidence of survival, bones that healed, workers who lived years after catastrophic injuries, amputations performed with surgical precision. This suggests a society that valued its workers enough to care for them when they were hurt. They weren't disposable, they were valued. We find evidence they were fed well: beef, fish, bread, beer, nutrition levels that would have been exceptional for the time. So when we look at these monuments, we should see both things: incredible achievement and incredible sacrifice, human triumph and human cost. Both are part of the story. So here's the answer to our question. How did ancient civilizations move massive stones without machines? They used water to reduce friction. They built ramps, external, spiral, possibly internal. They used levers and fulcrums. They literally made statues walk. They organized thousands of workers with precision that rivals modern projects. But the deeper answer: they did it through human ingenuity, empirical testing, and the willingness to think in timescales we can't barely comprehend today. They observed how water affected sand and exploited it. They understood leverage, weight distribution, and mechanical advantage even without the math. They failed, adapted, and tried again. That's not primitive, that's the scientific method. These monuments aren't mysteries because we can't figure out how they were built. They're mysteries because we're humbled that human beings with such simple tools accomplished something so extraordinary. And some mysteries remain. We still don't fully know how those 1,200-ton stones at Baalbek were placed. We're still discovering voids and spaces in pyramids that might reveal new construction methods. Which brings me to you. What do you think? Knowing how they did it, are you more impressed or less impressed by ancient builders? I'm more impressed because now I understand the actual genius required. Drop a comment and tell me, if you could time travel to witness the construction of any ancient monument, which would you choose and why? The pyramids, Stonehenge, Easter Island, Göbekli Tepe? Thanks for watching.